Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 43. We're getting almost as old as me.
Seriously. Almost as old.
Because I am 44. I had to think. I'm telling you, Tess, after 30, you forget how old you are. It is a phenomenon. Anyway, it's episode 43 of Genn and Millie, where a Gen Xer and a millennial share the strength-based perspective through which they view the world. We are your hosts, Allison and Tess.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. Okay, so I love this. We had so many great reactions from the last episode on traveling and your strengths.
I love that you're saying reactions. Because there was so much in nonverbals from people.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Okay, so I have this hypothesis that I'm working out because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I went on my surprise destination vacation this weekend, which you were just, I think, a little bit horrified by.
I wasn't horrified, just horrified at the thought that someone would go somewhere that they couldn't plan.
They couldn't plan. Okay, so I think what I've realized is, like, every person I've talked to about this, and I know their strengths, how they travel and how they like to travel has almost been opposite from their strengths.
Agree.
And it's been very, like, I guess I've been so surprised by when I've asked people how they like to travel and what their strengths are. And I think I've realized that I've been so surprised because we think of travel as such a fun, stress-free experience, right? Like, ideologically, right? Traveling is a getaway, it's a vacation, it's a break from everyday life. But in reality, traveling is hard. It costs a lot. It is stressful. Perfect. Perfect background noise here.
Travel.
Travel. It's honestly, actually, I think more of a stress and more of a point of pain for people, the process of it, right, to get to the point of travel. And so I think people, when they describe traveling and their own experiences, are describing almost what I think is more of a basement of strengths, right, rather than that's the actual experience, rather than when we think about the idea of travel, we like to think about strengths in the balcony. But the reality of traveling is they often slip into the basement. And so an example, we talked a little bit about our own styles of travel, but I wanted to shout out to Darren, who is an awesome strengths champion in Sydney, Iowa, our Sydney, Iowa chapter on the board. And she sent us an email and described how she has a high discipline, high learner, high input, intellection, described how she was very intrigued by the idea of this surprise destination vacation where this company plans it for you because, you'd look at her strengths, and I replied this in the email back to her. I look at her strengths and I say, she must love the planning of traveling. All that research, all that information collection, the learner, the input, the intellection, the packing, the discipline. Like, all of her strengths on paper look like they would love the process of planning and arranging a vacation. But she said it is stressful and overwhelming for her. And I think that was like a light bulb went on. So she was someone that, based on her strengths, I would have never thought she would have loved the idea of a surprise vacation. But when she heard about it, she went home and talked to her husband about it. And they're heavily thinking about doing it, like, very seriously. And so I think it's very interesting because it just seems so contrary to where strengths naturally fall, right? But I think it's because, my hypothesis is because traveling, the planning and the process of putting together a vacation takes a lot of work. And for a lot of people, it results in stress, right? Trying to please everybody that comes on your trip, trying to make sure you pack everything you want to do when you go to a place. And so I think actually strengths fall maybe more into the basement in the planning of the trip, and maybe even the experience of the trip, because oftentimes it doesn't meet our expectations of the planning period. So I don't know. That's just my musings.
Okay, so I have some thoughts. I just listened to your podcast with Hannah. And one of the things I loved in that Beyond the Impact podcast is you talked about labels and how quickly we can do that.
Yep.
So what I noticed is that I was encouraging you to share about your trip with people who I thought would react in a way very similarly to my, what are you doing? And their initial nonverbals, yes. And kind of maybe, ooh.
Like trying to wrap my head around what that would look like.
But what I saw happening is people then went into a think about it. So I realized that I was maybe labeling people based on their strengths.
Sure, yep, me too.
But what they were doing is they were doing a think about it. And the think about it sometimes involved friends, family, and that person said, oh, that might be fun, or wouldn't that be interesting? So when I shared it with my husband, who has high maximizer, high deliberative, I thought, no way. He wouldn't have anything to do with this. He goes, that sounds great. That would be great. So 2 things came to mind for me. I was getting caught in my own labels or assumptions about strengths. And I heard you very clearly in your podcast talk about how we can so easily do that. And how important it is with strengths that we don't make assumptions because of blends.
Yep.
The other thing that came to mind for me is generationally. Do we have different approaches to taking time off work?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So here we are in vacation season.
Yep.
And I'm down to, here it is, it's June, and my vacation's running out, and guess what? I have a bunch of days, and I don't do vacation well because I don't leave work well. Same thing with my husband, who's same generational piece.
Yep.
I wondered if there's some generational ties to that. And then I also think that we really push people, Tess, to get out of their zone.
Yep.
So if people are listeners to us and they hear us talking about stretching ourselves, trying new things, getting out of our comfort zone, when you step back and you do some think around on something like this that you did, it's people, I think, digging deep and saying, I don't have to be in my typical mode.
Yeah.
I can maybe stretch a little further into a strength that's in my bottom, in my lesser talent themes, and I could maybe do something that might feel like more of a surprise.
Cool. Yep. And I think I realized, and this was a circle back to one of our much earlier podcasts, I loved the surprise. And I'm generally not a big surprise person. And so this was a big learning for me. And I think, although I was excited about it, and I wouldn't say it was a huge stretch out of my comfort zone to do something like this, like there really wasn't any worry that I had about it. Also, I think it's my context learner that found about it through the New York Times. So I was like, that's reputable. It's a reputable company, right? And
which would be different if it was, hey, Tess, I saw on the internet about this company. Go ahead.
Go ahead and do it, right? So one of my friends, when I came back, he said, oh, so you went to Savannah. That's really cool. I was very, very skeptical about this. And that was exactly what he said. He said, but when I found out where you went and I got to see what you did, I am not as skeptical.
Well, we all need... okay, so I'm going to go back to your podcast again. You and Aunt Hannah... I've got to really work on that. We now have Anna and Hannah on staff. Oh. You and Hannah were discussing Amazon and your favorite button on Amazon, which I think is completely fascinating. And also sociology. I loved your podcast a lot because I was thinking about, yesterday I sat in on a great training and I was thinking, why do I love this so much? It's because I love witnessing people interacting with one another. I love the interaction of groups and how people act in groups and how people feel honored in a group or a sense of belonging. And you talked about that on the podcast about sociology and cultural anthropology. Yep. But I loved the Amazon button. So you have to have some context to say, what would be comparable product? Where Hannah said,
buy one click now. That's her favorite button.
So I would love to hear from our listeners what their favorite Amazon button is. But I was thinking about this in regards to your trip. You would not probably have been as excited had it not been a reputable company. But also, this totally fed your learner in the sense of trying to figure it out.
Oh my gosh!
You were lit up last week. Yeah. Just, what do you think? What do you think?
Where do you think we're going? This is what I put.
And Savannah was a total surprise to you.
Total surprise, which honored my strategic so much, because strategic can guess the ending to anything. And so I was like, we did a reveal video. We put up a tripod in the airport and videoed ourselves opening the package or opening the envelope. And I'm literally sitting there with my hand clasped over my mouth, completely quiet, because I'm in utter shock. I cannot count on my fingers the amount of times I've totally been shocked by something.
And that had to be a really good feeling because it's a surprise.
Yep.
So remember we talked a little bit last time about anticipation?
Oh, yes. Yep. So I think I think what I realize is I don't like surprises when they come out of the blue. When I know there's something coming, there's that anticipation, right? And it was the surprise of where we were going. So you were like, I love surprises. And I do. I generally don't, because I need time to orient to whatever it is. So a surprise out of the blue, we talked about this I think it was even when we were still on video, right? We talked about surprises. Right. And surprises are really hard for me in general when it's totally out of the blue. but this was the best kind of surprise ever because I knew it was coming, but I didn't know the full kind of essence of it.
And so I think particularly around strategic, and I loved that you talked about strategic on the podcast, because it's one of those themes that there are a bunch of us that have it, but it looks different on each one of us. So for me, I think my strategic and woo loves surprises because I love to be caught off guard by fun party people. Or surprise parties are my favorite thing on earth. To either be in one or to host one. There's nothing better than a great party. A surprise party, next level. My kid's dad, I had so many surprise parties.
Oh no.
And it didn't honor him at all.
No,
it honored me. I was like, you guys, we're going to surprise Mike for his 27th birthday. And they were
27 and a half.
And then they thought, oh, okay. All right, she's having another surprise party. And I just loved it because I loved bringing people together, and that honored my woo strategic blend. Your strategic adaptability in that surprise, it was the anticipation and the lead up. Plus it was the trust that your context could say, I've read about this, I've done comparison, I know this is reputable.
Okay, and then I have to tell you this. So this is such a good, I was strength spotting myself. So when we found out and we did this reveal, we were so excited. We paused, we breathed. We're going to Savannah, Georgia. Yay, awesome, fun. Nowhere on any of our radar. And then so we get in the line, we get through security, and we're sitting there, and we have about 45 minutes or so till the plane leaves. And I say, okay, I'm going to go and learn everything I can about Savannah, Georgia, right? So I pull up my Google, and then I pause and I say, wait, I wonder if they gave us a fact sheet of history and information about the city. I was like, this is the best. I was thinking people with high input, or input's in my top 10, and then with my learner, but all the information that they gave almost a Yelp review. So there's a whole page of a local person and their perfect day in Savannah, someone from Savannah, local contributor, that's walked you through it. Each day, kind of this itinerary. It was so, so cool. And I was just like, so I kept the fact sheet because everyone was like, I don't want any of it. So I'm like, I'm folding this fact sheet and putting it in my journal because it's so much fun. But
so were you able to strength spot your two friends who joined you?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So it's so funny. So my friends and I are most of my friends in my community is big into the Enneagram. I'm kind of like the one strengths champion. So we did a lot of framework around that in terms of understanding what was happening. But it's definitely very similar to kind of their strengths personalities as well. So both of them have a lot of relationship building strengths high. They're both counselors or have counseling degrees. And so on our way there, we ended up getting stranded in Atlanta for a little while. So it was a bit of a bummer. We lost some time. And both of them were very frustrated. There was a point where I was very frustrated too, but my adaptability pulled into action. So we talked about how the three of us are really good travelers together because my friend Cammie is a really good planner. She likes to think things through beforehand. She likes to research, which I definitely do too, but she definitely is all about, she's a really good leader at the forefront of the trip, right? Giving us suggestions about, are you bringing this, or let's divide up who's bringing what so we don't all bring a straightener, things like that. So she's really good. I think she's high ranger. And then my friend Alex is very along for the ride, loves the excitement, yes, let's do it. And then I am very much, I can take charge in the moment, right? So when we found out we were getting stranded, it kept getting delayed because there was a big storm system that came through Atlanta. And so we kept getting delayed. And so I reached out to pack up and go. And I said, they said it's best to text us. So I was texting the lady that was on for the weekend. Her name is Rachel. And I said, hey, we've been delayed a couple times. Is there any way we just are sad about losing some time in there? And so I texted her and she texted me back and she said, I'm already on it. I'm on the phone with Delta. I'm on call with Delta right now to see if we can get you going. And so incredible, right? They were
That's
already
so honoring. Yeah.
So awesome. But she was so great to text us, update us, give us tips. She said, hey, I'm on the phone with them, but it sometimes helps if you go to a counter. Would you mind going to a counter? And so, I went up there and we kind of divided. One went to the help desk, one went to a local counter of our three pairs. And so it was just interesting to see us, in the moment.
Right.
Alex is definitely, she pulls her relationship building to help create and bring the harmony between all three of us because we're all kind of strong personalities. She is so good like that, so patient with all of us. I'm let's do something, let's go. Like, and I was excited to get there too, but I can definitely easily my adaptability, and then I have higher self-assurance that can just kind of take charge in that moment. And then my friend Cami, definitely just her planning and prep ahead of time. But then I don't think she has high adaptability, so it was a little bit like she was definitely a lot of the leader in the preparation. And then when it came down to punch time and the stress time, definitely some of my strengths pulled up.
That's a great team.
So it's such a great team. We talked about how we're such a good triad in terms of traveling together, because we have a lot of the essential, we're going to get there, we're going to get fun things planned and done, and then we're going to be able to relate well in the midst of it.
So Sherry and Katie, I know you guys listen. I'm thinking about Florida, and I'm thinking, where did we go wrong? But I'm just thinking about my friends and who I travel well with. I travel really well. There are two sets of three. I travel really well, Sherry, Katie, me. I travel really well, Erin, Kim, me. And we're getting ready for Grand Lake, and we always try to have a little bit of adventure. And Kim said, hey, we are not rafting the Colorado River this year. It is way too high. It is out of control. And I said, adventure? ? Because when we did do whitewater rafting, the river was so low that I literally could have, created artwork, the slowness of our raft. And so we were trying to create pictures to make it look like it was really intense. And so I was like, as we're going along. I mean, it was more adventurous to take the van ride to get to the rafting than the rafting was. So we always try to plan an adventure. And Erin is really good at thinking outside the box about those things. Kim has high discipline, and she's really good about thinking, okay, we're at this condo, we're going to do this for meals. She's really, really good about that. And so I'm thinking we are a great triad, to be able to travel together. Same thing with Sherry and Katie. So heads up, girls, we're gonna be talking about this. The other thing I want to ask you, Tess, the lady on the phone. So probably someone's on call for pack up and go. Would you love that job?
Oh, I think I would.
Would you rather be in the role of planning someone's trip or going on the trip?
Oh, going on the trip.
See, I would love to plan someone's trip for them.
Going on the trip.
And present it to them and hope that they have an absolutely great time.
If you ask me between planning a trip and going on a trip, I'm always going to pick going on a trip.
See, I would choose planning a trip for someone and being able to gift that surprise to them.
Okay, so if you want to do that, feel free.
For you?
Yeah.
No. No thanks. That's a hard pass.
What?
Because you wouldn't like it. And you would tell me. We are that respectful of one another as colleagues. You would tell me.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, I hate everything about this. And then I would be crushed.
I honestly doubt it because you know me.
Well, I was so excited about Savannah.
You would curate.
Totally off my radar, but I thought of all the places in the United States that Tess should be.
It was like and it was so perfect. I kept thinking, okay, somebody that plans this has to have high individualization because you could tell they read and they got to know us. And I wouldn't be surprised if they because we connected on social media beforehand because they'll tag us in any photos that they post of our trip. Like we send them photos throughout the trip. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they looked back through our social media profiles too, because it was we asked for a warm beach, but we also talked about how we love culture, history. We love kind of eclectic off the beaten path stuff. I'm gluten free, so I need accommodating restaurants. And all of those things were met. It was the perfect location for 3 very different people who really like to travel together.
So do you think they do it by the way that we do it, organically? I know when I was making matches as a program coordinator, I would take index cards and I would write all of these characteristics of the mentor and all of these characteristics of the mentee, and then I'd set out all my index cards and think about, okay, how does this work? Do you think they do it that level organic, or do you think that there's an algorithm they use like eHarmony?
Oh, I think it's a smaller up-and-coming company, so I bet they're doing it organically. They're getting to know the people.
I love that.
They're getting to know the responses. It's like a 5 to 7 minute survey that you fill out when you sign up, your contact information, obviously, payment, stuff like that. But it's a lot what do you like to do in a vacation? What is your purpose for traveling? Do you like to travel for relaxation, for culture, for adventure? And all 3 of us chose a different option, right? So we checked all 3 of them.
So do you think they have a debrief after your trip?
They sent us a survey already.
But do you think as a team, wouldn't that be so much fun?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, so this is a sociologist in both of us.
Mm-hmm.
What were we accurate on our hypotheses?
Yep.
Did they love the trip? What did they love about the trip? And then that, of course, is a learning tool for the next time
for sure.
that you see some of these characteristics or some of these responses.
And so it was cool, the survey, they asked, about accommodations, about the activities, about what was recommended, but then they also said, is there anything you experienced on your trip that you would want to recommend for future travelers to this city? Like, what did you do or find or experience that wasn't on our recommendations that we should add to a recommendation list? So there was one restaurant that we just kind of stumbled across on an island off the coast. We went to an island on one of the days to just hang out at the beach, and so I suggested that because it wasn't on the list, but it was this really cool kind of ma and pa local diner that we had breakfast at. So just like, I don't know, super cool.
So I love that because that means they're taking their surveys seriously.
Yep.
That's, of course, both of us.
Yep.
Survey research background. That's really important to me. Do you always answer surveys?
Most of the time, yes.
So do I, unless I think it doesn't matter. And if I feel even the slightest inkling that my survey responses don't matter, I'm not doing it.
That's funny. I usually respond to most of them because I recognize as a researcher there was some intention, right? And even if my individual response might not make a huge amount of difference, which I know usually it does, but I still will answer it. I'm actually a part of, I'm like a Southwest member, like Southwest Airlines and stuff, and they actually will give you points for your Southwest account. Like they invite a certain number of people to be a part of a survey cohort. So these people pay Southwest to get respondents for market research and things like that. And so I do that all the time.
And I believe, so Southwest would be a great example. After seeing them at Summit, I totally believe that they look at their survey responses.
Oh, yeah.
I just recently received a survey, and I've received the survey invite now 4 more times because apparently there's a tracking as to whether or not I've answered it. And I'm not really excited about it because I just kind of don't feel like my survey responses really matter. So I am curious about that always with people with surveys.
Yeah.
Most people in my life, I would say, rarely answer a survey.
Yeah.
I love them. I love market research stuff. If somebody calls me and says, hey, I'd like to ask a couple questions. Yep.
Heck yeah.
I've got time.
Are you from Gallup? No.
I mean, I just love it. I love that my opinion matters until I have any reason to believe that it doesn't, and you're just doing the survey to say you're doing the survey, and then
sure. And I take it too to learn to see what kind of scales do people use, what kind of are they doing it in a leading question. So it's also a little bit of like me filling out a survey. It's also me collecting almost intel on how someone else is doing it. So
survey research intel.
Oh man. Okay, so lots of, oh my gosh, it's such a long recap of our last. I love it though.
It was good.
All these musings about traveling though. I think there's so much that I've been thinking through in terms of strengths in traveling, and multiple recent articles and podcasts from local people about traveling. I think it's just travel season probably, but I usually don't travel during this season, so because it's so busy here. But one of the other things we wanted to do, we promised to do a recap of CliftonStrengths Summit. Woohoo!
Yes.
So we're excited to talk to you a little bit about our takeaways from the summit, maybe some things that we're planning on applying to our own learning or life or organization from this. So
I took lots of notes, of course, but I didn't write down people's names. Darn it. Okay, except for our friend Margie from Bemidji. So I can't remember who said this, but inclusion must be cultivated, and research proves that diverse teams are smarter.
Yeah.
Loved that. And then someone used the term on accident. It was one of the main presenters.
Oh, yeah.
Clapped. And she used it on accident because sometimes, and I do this a lot too, when I'm presenting, I get nervous and I combine words. Happens a lot, actually. Yeah. She said clapped her, and what she meant was clapping and laughter as audience participation. Yep. That is now a new word for me. Yes. Clapped her. Because when I laugh hard, I clap.
Sure.
An authentic laugh for me includes clapping.
Yeah.
So if you have earned clapped-er, you are funny. Also, we can't train you to like people. sat down and then I looked at you.
Oh my gosh. So this is Southwest Airlines lady. And
that's who it was.
So yes. Okay, so this is an interesting thing because a lot of my takeaway from the learning was about domains because I went to a couple sessions on the new 34 report and I'm kind of split between strategic thinking and relationship building as my dominant, but strategic thinking is a lot higher, and then relationship building is secondary. And I think sometimes...
Okay, let's pause a second. Explain that to people who don't know what that means.
Okay. So each of the 34 themes are sorted into kind of 4 larger domains, which is essentially their default mode, right? Each strength has kind of a default. Each strength either helps you get things done. It's in the executing domain. It helps you influence other people. So in the influencing domain, it helps you build relationships or think critically in the strategic thinking domain. So there are those 4 larger domains that overlay the 34 themes. So each one fits into one of those categories, yet it's not exclusively in that category. It's the default mode of that theme, yet it also functions in all of them. So when you break out even my top 10, I'm only still in relationship building and strategic thinking. So in my top 10, I have 6 strategic thinking and 4 relationship building strengths. And so oftentimes you can look at my strengths and say, oh, you're good at, you really like people. I do generally, but they're tempered a lot by my strategic thinking themes.
Yes.
Which think very critically about the world. So I describe kind of on our DDM team that I'm on here at Teammates. It's data development and marketing is the team that I sit on kind of the administrative side of the organization. And we have a couple team members who have high woo and positivity. And it's awesome. They are all like, oh, that'd be so cool. What if we did this? What if we did this? And me, the realist, is like, that's not going to work. and it's a really good balance, right? So in my podcast with Hannah, we talked about the balance between her and my strength. She's one of those people on the team that has high positivity, high woo. So she's always coming up with these awesome new ideas and gets really excited about them. And then I kind of temper them for her. But at the same, on the flip side, she helps draw me out of a tendency to be a little pessimistic, right, about life and about people and about those types of things, right, which is why I love strengths so much, because it helps bring me out of that too, right, that everybody has strengths even though they frustrate me sometimes. So when I get into my basement, it means I'm being pulled mostly into the basement of strategic thinking, which tends to come out as I hate people. Right? I don't like people. They're frustrating. They are poor drivers, right? Like all these things. And so that just tends to be a basement of my strengths as I isolate. I think the world is out to get me. That's just kind of where they fall. And so I know I'm in a bad state when everybody annoys me, right? I know I'm in my basements. And so one of the presenters talked about how you can't really teach people to like people. Mm-hmm. And I've been in a state of basements of strengths recently. So Allie looked at me and I'm like, yep, I have to consciously and intentionally look for the good in people. It's not a default mode for me.
Okay, so pause.
Yep.
That's the case for me too. And yet the two of us are strengths champions for our organization. This is what we teach.
Yep.
But the really important thing that I think every single person who is listening to this or who hears our voices at any time we're presenting, it is a practice.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It is a practice. So yes, it's wonderful for me to look around and say, oh my goodness, these are the 5 strengths that you lead with. That's awesome. And here are my 5 that I lead with. That's awesome. But to practice it, to really say, I want to be intentional about complementary partnerships, it brings so much respect for one another. And that's what I heard very distinctly on your podcast. You and Hannah have very different strengths, yet what I'm seeing is this evolution of honoring one another, truly what we talk about in training, because Hannah isn't going to think the way that you do, and you're not going to think the way that Hannah does. No. Now, when we present on that 101 level strengths, we say, isn't that glorious? Yeah. It's amazing that not anyone else thinks like you. But the real practice of it...
the flip side of that.
Nobody
thinks the way you do.
The real practice of that, which I've been so lucky, I'm using that in quotation marks, air quotes, that my kids have taught me that most. That we say in Strengths 101, yay, no one thinks like you. And then it's like, oh, no one thinks like you. So I think that is important for us to be vulnerable, be open, be honest, be real, to say this is a practice. So we've been intentional about practicing it. That's that's where our strengths advocacy comes from.
Yep.
It's an ongoing practice. It's never a one and done.
Yep.
It's never a one Genn and Millie episode
Yep.
and done. I mean, I think about these things that we talk about here.
Yep.
Hours later, days later, weeks later, years later. So I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I know in the conversation I had with Jerlene after she listened in to the podcast, she said, stop every once in a while and explain this a little bit.
That's good.
Because our listeners,
come from all different.
I hope we have new. We have new people listening in. And then I love that you took your learning and you're like zeroed in.
Yeah.
You are just going to take it. Your learner's like, I'm zeroed in. My input is like, I have 45 things bullet pointed that I just want to be able to share them.
Yep.
I don't really have a whole lot of intention around them, and that's what makes you and I a very complementary partnership.
Yeah.
I love the idea generating and the gathering, but then I'm kind of like, let's just gather some more.
Let's just keep musing over this.
Let's keep adding to the Dropbox.
Okay.
That's different than the way you think.
Oh, very much so. Yep. So I and I still have yet to do this because I ended the summit. I had like 48 hours and then I got on a plane that I didn't know where I was going at first, and I ended up in Savannah, and I just got back a couple days ago. So I will soon read through my notes from the summit, and I usually try and find from any conference 3 practical things I want to do with my learning, right? Because for me, and I don't know, I think it's partially the learner, partially the input, but also I think some of the adaptability maybe and strategic that says learning is not just for the purpose of gathering information and for becoming a master, right, with that information, which is, I think, definitely, right, a default function of learner, for example, right? Learner and input falling into the strategic thinking theme, their default could be just to muse around and around and around, right? Especially given so many strategic thinking themes I have constantly processing, right? That strategic, I think, really is what puts it into practice, maybe coupled with adaptability to say, I don't learn for the purpose of learning, I learn for the purpose of growing. And one of my favorite quotes from the summit that I don't even have to look up because I remember, you stop growing when you choose to stop growing. And that was one of my breakout speakers. You can, and that's totally growth mindset, right?
Absolutely.
I know that learning is a lifelong thing. When I do our values chart, when we talk through and do exercises on what are maybe key values, things that you guide your life by, learning always comes out on top.
Right,
Learning and faith are the things for me, and they go hand in hand. And so I will come up with kind of 3 practical things of where to go as a result of the learning.
I think for me, I have 25 things at least, but I need to be so much more intentional. So right now, in this season of life, I have more time than I've ever had.
Sure.
Because I just wrote a blog piece on my personal blog about this season of momming, and they don't need me. Of course they need me, but they don't really need me. And it's weird.
Yeah.
Because I got started momming at 21 years old. So this has been my life for basic adulthood. So I'm learning how to be a different adult than I've ever been. And it gives me more time, but I'm having a hard time narrowing down what I want to do with my time. So instead of one book to focus on, I have 6 in a stack that I'm like, I'm going to get to this summer. That's not going to happen. I know that's not going to happen. And I have to take away from the stack. Sure. I know that all of the learning that I had from Summit, I can only apply a couple of things in this season and this time, but I want to get to a lot of things. But I also think that it's good in certain seasons to say, I want to be open and expansive in the way that I accept the messages that show up. So I kept a tally of how many times I heard the word fun. Now I understand that for most people, fun. I have heard consistent messages recently that I'm not fun. And so I've been listening for and noticing, when do I feel like I'm having fun? What do I notice about it? When? And then I started listening for the word. Yeah. And then I kept a tally during CliftonStrengths Summit. But then the really cool piece that I do want to share, that you and I think
both want to discuss.
Yes.
Is this concept we sat on a breakout from a couple speakers, and again, I don't remember those off the top of my head. You might have them written down, but a couple speakers that talked about speaking and facilitating workshops, conversations, and kind of large group activities around strengths, and how your unique strengths make you a unique facilitator. And I really liked that. Really liked the principle of it. And kind of they talked about this idea that each and every one of us is going to pull influencing into a speaking area, right? Which I think was really cool. When we talk about those 4 domains again, is kind of how it was structured. My highest influencing theme is number 13. So it is not very high, right? Which actually I found out that's about the average place that you find the first influencing theme in most people. It's the least common domain that shows up. One of the breakout speakers, Al Wiesman, I think is Wiseman, he talked about your dominant domain was a breakout that I went to, and he said that's about where the first influencing theme falls for most people.
Is what number?
About 13, 14.
Really?
Yep, so it's the least common. It also has 3 of the least common strengths overall, right? Significance, command, and self-assurance are like the 3 least common to show up in somebody's top 5. So overall, it's the least common domain. And it's definitely the least common in our staff when we look at that as well. A total of, 25 of those things showing up.
And no one has more than 2.
Yeah, no one has more than 2. Interesting.
Which also makes sense.
Yep.
Based on that.
Yep, for sure. So essentially this breakout speaker said everybody has to influence. That's like the mode of speaking and facilitating, right? You're trying to get people on board with your message, whether or not you have influencing themes. But you need to pull on kind of the mode of all of the other 3 domains in order to facilitate a great workshop, right? So connecting with the audience would be relationship building, teaching the content would be strategic thinking, and applying concrete next steps would be executing. And so we kind of did this thing, it was awesome, where he said, if you are connecting and teaching but not applying,
right,
you're giving surface level stuff.
Right.
If you are teaching and applying but not connecting with your audience, there's never going to be anything that happens as a result of it. If you're connecting and applying, but you're not teaching the content, they're not walking away with anything. So essentially, you need to be pulling from all 4 domains when you're facilitating. And I think it was interesting to think about, yes, as an individual facilitator, that's what you need to do. But if you're not strong in one area, how can you use great complementary partners to facilitate well?
Right.
So I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to hear a little bit about how you describe, based on your domains, what your primary mode of facilitation is. We all know what kind of both of us are, but
well, and I think you and I present well together.
Yep, because
yes, but also so outside the domains, I don't have high self-assurance, and frankly, no one on our team does.
Yeah.
Now you have it higher than I do.
Yep.
So I hear all the time from people, oh, you should take it again. You should take it again because I bet your self-assurance is going to be higher now. And I've always explained that I use my input, communication, strategic woo, and empathy at all times when I'm presenting.
Yep.
The input is I need to gather information about this group. So the session I sat in on that I really, really loved was he was talking about what kind of presenter are you based on your strengths.
Yep.
And he's talking about doing a white paper on it. I mean, it's fascinating to me. So I'm going to gather information before I go. I have a group of high school students later today. I am gathering information about this group before I go. So that's my input.
Yep.
My communication is the storytelling that I bring in. So I decided this morning when I was out for a run that I'm completely changing the PowerPoint presentation because I know I need a better closing statement. And I'm always bad at the close. My closing when I write is bad. My closing when I present is not as strong. So I know I need to do better in my closing. So I'm closing with the picture of 7th grade me, and I'll tell you a little bit later on why.
Cool.
Then my strategic is thinking about who's my complementary partner. So I need to know that Professor Tess can, just like she did on that podcast, do the 1 to the exponential quadrillion, whatever you've numbered. What did you say? What is it?
It's like
quintillion.
Oh, no. It's a quintillion. So it's not like a billion, a trillion. It's essentially like the 12th extension of a billion, a trillion, a quadrillion, a quintillion, a centillion, an octillion, a nontillion, a decillion. And then it's like 2 more.
You lost me at million. So what I thought of when I heard that on the podcast
Yep.
is that I need that.
Yep.
Because I can't do it. So when we had Jess visiting from South Dakota, who's our new regional coordinator for that area, and we were talking at dinner,
Yep.
you tell a story in such a meaningful way with data. And then I come in with the empathy, the heart pull.
Yep.
I mean, I've got and then this mentor-mentee, this happened, and and I get misty, not fake. It's happening here and here in my heart.
Because you're connecting with the audience and you're influencing, right, based on that.
But essentially, I feel like you're teaching.
Yeah, I'm teaching. And that, I think, it was why I love this framework of kind of the 4 domains overlay, even if it isn't like, and I think it's interesting because I feel like I teach and apply really well and you connect and influence really well, but I don't have really a lot of executing themes very high. My first one is 12. But I think it's the teaching, it's the strategic, and the learner that lets me apply really well. Kind of like I was talking about with those application steps, even from the conference. And so I love this because even though the breakout speaker set, essentially you need all 4 of these to facilitate really well. Well, you don't actually really, right? Yes, individually, but if you have a great complementary partner that can fill the needs of a couple of those buckets, and that's why I do love presenting with you, because you do connect to the audience really well, and you were able to influence really well with just who you are as a demeanor, right? Your social superpowers to be able to help people connect really well to the content. I can come in with all the teaching I want to. I taught a couple of new staff members on CivicCorps the other day, and one of them fell asleep. So it's like, I'm like one of those things where I'm just like, I can teach all you want, but sometimes I don't connect very well. And that's just the reality of it. And so
I think this is a really, and we'll have to share this with our listeners, but I think it's such a great way to think about, again, with the domains, this doesn't necessarily mean that that I'm not teaching and I'm not applying, because for me, woo, which is influencing, that's my teaching style.
Oh yeah.
Because my woo is very driven by the audience. It's paired with empathy. So my woo is not, I want you to like me. My woo is, if you walk away not carrying some of this with you, I'm pained.
And I think your individualization in your top 10 also definitely plays into that too, is your catering, your woo, and your communication based on the perceptions of the audience as well, what you infer that they need from your individualization, and then what you're seeing, their reaction is from your woo. So it's like a twofold pathway that you're kind of using to then cater what you're teaching.
And then I think just understanding the balance. So the presenter that I listened to, he talked about, and he was so good, and I immediately went and followed him on Twitter, but do you think I can think of his name? One of them, John, I commented on his post on the Called to Coach page. Okay. That I just added kind of the things I've learned from John section to the notebook, but also now things that he's sharing on the Facebook page, which I think was really good. But this particular presenter, he talked about the 3 major fault lines. So here are the fault lines of presenters, and you will love this because it's initially what we talked about. Number 1, everyone thinks the way we do. There's no doubt in my mind, and he used input as an example, and I was just like personally offended immediately.
Ouch.
People with high input just share all kinds of information, and you lose people that way. So if you assume that everyone else thinks with your Pinterest brain, Allison Horn, that is not true. Who doesn't love questions? Who does not love questions? Who in this world would possibly not love a sentence that ends with a question mark? Turns out lots of people.
Lots of people do,
so
actually.
That's your fault line. Number 2, everyone has the same talent that we do. And what we see in them that we don't have. So it's that assumption, like, a great way that he said it is, she's got her gifts and I've got mine. So it's kind of a balance. So think about strengths envy. Number 3, when someone says something to us, they're talking about us. Our words can be misinterpreted. So when someone says something to us, we immediately get on the defense that they're talking about us. I thought that was really good. And these are universal truths, or there are universal truths, and then there are you truths. And I think I posted that on my Instagram story. Hey, little side note. I did not realize that you're not supposed to share the same thing on Snap stories on Instagram.
I don't know. I don't do Snapchat.
So it's apparently a generational faux pas that I am committing every time that I do my sunshine coffee mug on both Insta stories and Snapchat stories.
And Facebook stories. That's another red flag. Oh man, you've crossed the line if you
join
all of your social media accounts and post the same thing on all of them.
They're all different people.
I know. It's okay, Allie.
I know. Lauren got on my case about it. Okay.
Sorry.
His last name, it's Gary Rifkin.
Okay.
It's talent-focused presenting. So his quandary was, okay, Tess, based on your top 5, how do you present? So thinking about just even back to strength-based parenting or the great work that Kurt Liesfeld did in the way that we, a theme blend, what that looks like. So what is your presentation style based on your top 5, and how does that lead you to wonderful success as a presenter, but also
where are your fault lines? Yep.
Yes.
Ooh, that's really
good.
So
I can't believe that people wouldn't love for me to mention 45 books. In dialogue that I have with people, I'm like, oh, have you read Sir Ken Robinson's The Element? I name drop books right and left. And until I listened to his presentation, I thought, well, surely people want to know about books to read.
Not everybody likes that, no.
And I heard you say that in the podcast with Hannah. Yeah. Not everybody, loves a research paper.
And I think I've become more and more aware of it because of something like that. Like, I love to, print off a 100-page research paper and dig into it for some light reading at night, right? So, everyone is not like that, and I've become more and more aware of that. And I think that it's really important because it doesn't change what I do, right? You're probably going to still name drop 100 books, right? In a conversation.
Get used to it.
Get used to it, right? But I think it helps almost guard our hearts to say, I am not offended when you don't read those 100 books, when you don't also love research, right? Because I know that you are different than me. And if you take away one thing from our conversation, awesome, right? But if you don't ever read any one of the books I suggested, it's okay as well, right? Because I know that you are very different than me. One of my friends who came on the trip explicitly, I don't like to read. I'm not going to bring a book on a vacation, right? And so I have to be aware of that. I had to curate for my 3-day trip only 3 books to bring, right? So we are very different, and when we're aware of that, I think it helps guard our hearts from the offense of other people, right? I'm not mad at someone then if they don't want to hear all I'm learning about a research paper as much as I want to share about it, right? I am less offended because I realize that's not what excites them, right? I hope all of us, right, have people that still want to love and honor and listen to what we're excited about purely because they're in relationship with us, right? They're friends with us. That's what awesome spouses are for, right? They listen or awesome friends are for. They listen to what you're excited about, even if it doesn't make them excited.
Right.
But there's also times where they might be under stress. They might be frustrated or annoyed, or they might have their own things that they want to share about that then you need to reciprocate and listen to them, right? Real life happens, and that means that not everybody is going to love what you love or get excited about what you get excited about, and that's okay.
So that brings me to one of my favorite quotes that I say often here, but self-awareness is underrated.
Oh, yeah.
It's very powerful. Strengths is a very powerful tool. But knowing yourself, knowing how you lead, how you communicate, what lights you is so helpful, not just in living your best life, but in making sure that you understand others.
Yeah.
And that no one is going to be exactly like you. That the way that we see and view the world is so very unique. And I think every time we come away from Strengths Summit, we have some pieces of uniqueness that we want to share, and we want to spread that, because who wants to go to a conference and not do anything with it?
Yep.
You and I, for sure. But there might be some people who go to a conference just for the social aspect and they love being in it, but they may not have 3 things that they're going to intentionally learn and practice and do, or they might not have 25 things that they want to share. They may just want to be in it. And so I think that's such a great thing for us to think about as we go into our season of conference. How can we honor all of the different strengths that are going to show up at that event? I'm really excited that you and I are taking on the project of recommends.
Oh, Yes, I'm so stoked.
And we learned that from Ainsworth, from that wonderful, little hotel where they had staff recommendations for coffee and dinner. And I'm excited about that. I think that honors both of our individualization, but it also honors the people who are attending, that they can feel a little bit of that, creating a culture of invitation before they even arrive.
Definitely. Cool. So some takeaways. We would love to hear first a little bit, what's your favorite feature on Amazon? What's your favorite button on Amazon? And how do you think that plays into your strengths? So if you didn't listen to the Beyond the Impact pod, I talked about how the reviews and the comparisons are kind of my favorite features, customer reviews, learning real life experiences after someone bought the product. And then also the comparison feature that if you look up something, I think I was looking up espresso machines is what my example was about the one that I was looking at, and then it compares like 5 ones next to it on some like specs that might be interesting to know. So, and then Hannah gave the example of the one click buy it is like her favorite button, totally her activator. Mine's totally my context and learner. And so what's your favorite feature on Amazon? Allie, you should share what your favorite feature on Amazon is.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
I have to look.
Next step.
I just like being on it.
Sorry, next step.
I just like looking.
Tune in for the next episode. But we'd love to hear you, if you contemplate that, what's your favorite feature of Amazon? What's something you always look at when you go to Amazon and you purchase something? Secondly, we'd love to hear a little bit about what kind of facilitator or presenter are you? I'm sure everybody speaks in front of people at some point, right? And so what kind of facilitator presenter are you? How do your strengths play into that in a positive way? But also, how do your strengths maybe limit you, or what are your fault lines when it comes to your presenting, as we heard from that speaker? And then I have a third question that I remembered that was probably my favorite question from the whole summit, that I just would love to hear people's responses, right? We know that our strengths function individually, but our top 5 are kind of our self, right? Our top 10 are dominant themes, but really we can describe a lot of who we are in our top 5. And I think we sometimes limit it to explaining our top 5 in terms of here's how I explain my context, here's how I explain my adaptability, right? I want to know holistically, what story does your top 5 tell about who you are? That was my favorite question that was presented in terms of asking people about their strengths. What kind of story does your top 5 tell others about who you are? If you were to break down the top 5 words, not use strengths words, the theme words themselves, but what kind of story overall as a whole does your top 5 tell about who you are?
Okay, and then my question, would you rather be in the position of it's your job to plan someone's vacation or be the vacationer?
Be the vacationer.
So
that's
the
good.
Name of the organization the company?
Pack Up and Go.
Would you rather be the facilitator for Pack Up and Go, the on-call kind of person for Pack Up and Go, the planner, or would you rather be Tess being in the Pack Up and Go? I am completely fascinated to hear how people respond to that, because I think it's so much around surprise.
Oh, totally is, and definitely our strengths play into that. Oh man, so much good content, so many good questions. Thanks for sticking with us till the end of the episode. We love musing and talking through these things, and both of us are definitely verbal processors. So I feel like a lot of this podcast is us verbally processing what we've been learning.
Without a script or a plan.
Without a script or a plan. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to episode 43 of Genn and Millie. As always, hey, we're new around here. We're gaining traction, so subscribe, give us feedback, let us know how we can improve the content we're sharing with you. Share this with a friend and ask them some of the questions that we posed in today's episode. We'd love to hear from you. That's one of our favorite things. As much as we love recording and discussing this, one of our favorite thing, I think my favorite thing of the whole podcasting process, is the emails and responses that we get as a result of people listening to our episode. So feel free. You don't have to be necessarily a part of teammates. We'd love that. But anyone who's listening, we'd love to hear what's going on. All your friends. I'd love to hear from Katie and Aaron and all of your friends. Give me intel into Allie's travel style. But interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email if you're around the teammates world, or feel free to follow us on Instagram at Genn and Millie. That's at GENNANDMILLIE, and interact with us there. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much, and until next time.